comes to all things cryptid behavior, more often than not, I struggle to narrow down who I want to talk about in a day. Like, sure, it would be easy to just go with the most mainstream guys like Bigfoot, Nessie, I'm looking at you, but I like to change things up, keep them interesting, challenge myself. So, question for you, who do you think is the creepiest cryptid out there? Let me know in the comments and let's dive into some that freak me out. So how about we start off today with something that's guaranteed to make me go, ugh, a large insectoid something spotted in Oregon. So back in the early 2000s, a man by the name of Adam Brittle was out for a bike ride at around 4:45 in the morning near the Willamette River in Eugene, Oregon. The spot he chose to stop and rest at was next to the famous Owen Rose Garden Park, and Interstate 5 ran overhead. So he was underneath, next to the river, he put his back against one of the support beams from the highway and was just chillin'. But that's when he noticed some strange things going on across the river from where he was, which he estimates was maybe 50 feet on the bank. He saw two tall, thin but very muscular mantis insect beings on the other bank. Yucky. The first one was less than 10 feet from the water's edge, not moving at all, but its eyes were open and glassy like mirrors, and there was a person there, on the ground, face down and looking like maybe he fell, and that's when Adam noticed the second hellion. Now you might be asking yourself, how or why didn't Adam notice the second creature before that point? It's because this thing wasn't super clear to his eyes since it was jerking backwards and forwards so quickly over another body that seemed to move like a blur, which that's very fast. So at this point, obviously Adam was a little terrified. Like, yes, that should be obvious, but I wanted to make sure I was crystal clear. He slid forward from his pole, attempting to quietly move away, but looked back up against his will, and that's when he heard strange talking and what sounded like the banging of metal on concrete. He was met with the view of what looked like a white, bald man with big black sunglasses peering out from behind the pillar barely 15 feet away from him. Adam made eye contact with whatever it was and scrambled to get out of there as quickly as he could. He stumbled a couple of times, never looking back as he hopped on his bike and began pedaling like his life depended on it. And hey, as far as we know, maybe it did. Right after he started riding, his stomach decided to start emptying itself from the stress of the entire situation, and that's when something flashed by Adam, and it was so quick that it seemed like it was running at hyperspeed. He decided to go to the hospital to be safe, and outside the window of the emerge waiting area, he observed a black car doing laps around the building for a solid hour, as if it was waiting for something or somebody. And the windows were fogged, so all he could make out were the outline of 3 bodies, which only added to his fear until they left. And he's just sitting there like, I need help, but at the same time, I'm feeling scared. A couple of days after the whole debacle, Adam was feeling brave and went back to the scene of the unknown to try and figure things out. He noticed a lack of any kind of track marks or footsteps where the unknown creatures had been, but it almost looked like the area had been dug up and resettled, which creepy. Now apparently he hasn't seen the creatures ever since, but like, who knows? Time to venture over to Monterey Bay for the tale of Bobo. Will you indulge me and allow me to tell this like the incredible story it is? Thank you kindly. It was a clear fall day, and the Pacific Ocean was as flat and clear as a giant mirror. From Captain Sal Coletto's small salmon fishing boat, 10 miles off Moss Landing, the indentation of Monterey Bay on the shore looked like a giant thumbprint as he headed back towards Point Pinos. After a day of luckless fishing in the waters of Santa Cruz, the Monterey fisherman was looking forward to getting home. Suddenly, Coletto noticed something floating in the sea about a half-mile farther out. Thinking it might be a man bobbing in the ocean, he revved the engine and headed out towards the object. When the captain got within 100 feet of the thing, he saw a creature with a head the size of a 50-gallon barrel. It was tapered to where a duck-like bill protruded from the massive bulging forehead. Coletto started to think about how a pair of fishermen had disappeared recently without a trace. Maybe this sea monster had devoured them. Not wanting to join their ranks, he pushed his boat's throttle all the way down and headed back towards the Monterey Peninsula. He decided that he wasn't going to tell anybody about what he'd seen. He was like, no, I don't feel like being labeled crazy. Zip. 16 years later though, Coletto was traveling towards the fishing grounds off of Half Moon Bay on his 45-foot boat, the Dante Alighieri, and while the crew ate lunch in the galley below, Coletto and his brother-in-law swapped fishing stories as the craft headed northwards. Eventually, his brother-in-law started talking about a strange sea creature that he'd spotted a few times at the edge of the deep Monterey submarine canyon. Coletto got the chills as his brother-in-law described how other fishermen had said the beast would only surface on calm, sunny days, about 24 hours before a strong northwest wind would start to blow. And this was a windless day, and the water was smooth and silver as liquid mercury. As Coletto gazed towards the Santa Cruz Mountains, he observed something bobbing in the sea, and his heart fluttered like a dying fish's gills. He realized immediately that it was that strange creature once again. He yelled out to the crew, "All hands on deck! They poured out of the galley and stood on the bow of the boat, wondering what the commotion was all about. "I want all of you guys to see this," he said, as he slowly brought the boat closer to the beast. The captain then cut the motor, and the boat drifted within 50 feet of the object. The creature's eyes were closed, and it floated on the surface as if it was sunbathing or sleeping. "It has the face of a monkey," his cook squealed. Let's leave. This is a bad omen." His brother-in-law was like, "Oh no, that looks like the face of an old man." Now the noise must have awakened the monster, and it slowly opened its eyes, which were as big and pink as grapefruits. The creature's body was brown and almost as long as a boat. Its skin was wrinkled and sagged from its frame like ill-fitting clothing. Plato thought to himself that this was a very old animal, and while the crew argued about what it looked like, the monster quietly slid underwater. Following the sighting, several other fishermen saw the creature, and eventually the people of the area started to refer to the animal as Bobo, the old man of the sea. So from then on, Coletto kept a camera on his vessel, hoping to once again spot Bobo and get photographic evidence of its existence. Sadly, he never saw it again. But a few years later, in 1925, a strange sea creature washed ashore on a beach about 2 miles north of Santa Cruz. Though the body was decomposed, scientists, including the notable E.L. Wallace, a former president of the Natural History Society of British Columbia, didn't think that this was the carcass of a whale or a shark. He's like, this might be a plesiosaurus, a large marine reptile held over from the Jurassic period, but he couldn't tell you for sure. And here's the thing, reportings of this creature continue to this day. To this day. Yeah, that's creepy enough. No thank you. Oh, we're not done with unknown sea cryptids yet, folks. We're just moving 26 miles over to Capitola. A captain who prefers to stay anonymous was driving a team towards the area, when suddenly his attention was captured by some young sea lions not far out. They were lined up and several large lions were swimming back and forth in front of them. Much farther out, he saw the water being churned to foam and then thrown high up in the air. It was shiny, and at first he was like, okay, it's just a big fish, whatever. A dozen or more so lions were battling it, and every once in a while, all would rise out of the water. So it was looking to him as though all the sea lions were attacking it beneath, and then the monster came out of the water several times. Afterwards, when he was telling the story, he's like, I think it's about 30 feet long. So a few days later, the body of a strange creature was discovered by Charles Moore on the shore in that very same area that our witness saw the battle. The body was examined by none other than E.L. Wallace. You know that expert I just talked about? Pretty great. And he's like, my examination of the monster was quite thorough. I felt at its mouth and found it had no teeth. Its head is large and its neck fully 20 feet long. The body is weak and the tail is only 3 feet in length from the end of the backbone. These facts do away with the whale theory, as the backbone of a whale is far larger than any bone in this animal. And once again, its tail is too weak for an animal of the deep and does away with that last version. And with a bill like this, it must have lived on herbage. So later he offered the theory that the monster might have been preserved in a glacier for millions of years, finally being released by the gradual melting of ice and eventually ending up in the area. But to this day, nobody knows exactly what that thing was, just that there tends to be a lot of aquatic cryptid activity all in the same area. Time to move out of this bay and venture over to the Bridgewater Triangle. It is one of the most haunted areas in Massachusetts, heck, just a notable spooky spot in the overall United States. Matt Danchuk and his buddies decided one night, around 3 a.m. in the morning, that it would be a fun idea to go exploring the Profile Rock area, just for laughs. Look, I know we can all see where this is going, but I'm gonna tell the story anyways. If you can't see, well, 3 a.m.'s not a good time to go exploring, folks. So guys were on their way out, they were walking down a long winding path to get back to their vehicle, they'd done their exploring, but that's when stuff began to happen. So let's set the scene for everybody. It's pitch black out, the only thing the guys could see was the moon shining through the trees, and Matt felt the need to turn around while they were walking. Not sure why, but something caught his eye. He spotted some sort of creature, limply running towards the group. It was about 100 feet away, favoring one leg over the other. Now initially he thought it was somebody who got injured in the woods or something, until he saw this thing run past the moonlight. So you know how when somebody draws a person as like a stick figure, like that? Apparently that's exactly how this thing looked. It had no facial features, no face, just a completely blank-like stick figure. Its body looked the same from what Matt could see, no definition or anything. Now Matt nudged his buddy to turn around as well. When he saw the look of horror go across his friend's face, they made eye contact and just ran until they reached their vehicle. They never saw the creature again, and thankfully haven't attempted a stupidly risky 3 a.m. jaunt again either. Like, common sense. Apparently it ain't so common. Alrighty everybody, how about I end today with a classic? Good old Bigfoot. A truck driver in Greene County near Wind Ridge, near a gas well site, saw a large, coarsely haired, covered figure in the headlights of his truck. After initially thinking it was a stump, it stood there and looked at him as he was passing, and then jumped into the thick brush behind itself away from the road. He thinks it was about 7 to 8 feet tall, very thickly built in the arms and legs with very large hands, and had a flat face, wide mouth, and a wide and flat nose. He observed the large foot and toe pads as it turned and jumped into the brush. He contacted dispatch to inform them, and the next day the company's safety team reviewed the video and determined that wasn't a bear, and he verified that other coworkers had also seen a similar subject about 4 miles away at another well site. And it was so scary that some folks actually quit their jobs over it. And because he likes his evidence, he also confirmed with a local property owner that he had also heard and recorded similar subjects in the area. Maybe it's time I invest in a dash cam for my own vehicle. And that brings me to the end of my time once again, folks. I've been Alexa, your resident ookie spooky girly, and if you enjoyed my ramblings, could you help us out by giving this video a like, subscribing if you aren't already, hit the bell for more terrifying content from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos, and I'll see y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.